Hi, my name is Linda. I'm 42 years old, and I'm married to Adam. I had been counting down the days to the Liberty Insurance Conference in Baltimore, a few days away from home, from the chaos of my kids and Adam's watchful eyes. I told myself it was just work, a chance to network. But deep down, I knew I wasn't innocent. I'd been drawn to someone new, and what seemed like harmless attention was starting to feel dangerously heavy. The morning I left, the kids were in their usual rush. Sarah trying to pack her books, Jake whining about missing breakfast, and Adam hovering like he always did when he sensed something out of balance. I plastered my most cheerful smile on my face, kissed them both, and whispered that I'd be back before they knew it. I didn't have to lie about the conference. That part was true. But every step toward my car felt a little heavier, a little more fraught with tension, knowing Adam's intuition was sharper than he let on. When I arrived at the Marriott, I didn't anticipate him being there. My mind, strangely calm, yet jittery with a twinge of fear, didn't predict the pounding surprise that would come moments later. There he was, Adam, standing near the revolving doors, a forced grin on his face that didn't reach his eyes. My stomach knotted, my chest tightened. Adam, what are you doing here? I asked, pretending a casual confusion, though my voice betrayed my nerves. I figured I'd surprise you, he said, keeping his tone light, holding out his keycard with practiced ease.
Dinner?
Thought we could. I cut him off with a quick smile, pressing my lips together. Relief, maybe even a small flicker of pride, washed over me. I hadn't expected him to appear, and now, faced with him, I realized just how tangled my own web had become. I was caught in the throes of an internal game, trying to appear professional and composed, even as the storm behind my eyes raged. I led him into my room, keeping my distance, brushing my hair over my shoulder like I hadn't been thinking about him at all, like I hadn't been replaying the moments I shared with Tom over the past weeks. The small desk was stacked with paperwork, all carefully arranged to maintain the illusion of diligence. I smiled faintly, telling myself it was only my imagination that made him so tense. Stay the night, I said brightly, forcing normalcy into my voice. They gave me a decent room. You can help me relax after these stuffy seminars. Adam's half-smile was polite, but I could sense the tension coiled in him, like a spring ready to snap. I left for a shower, humming softly, pretending to wash away more than just the dust of travel. I could feel his eyes on me, though he pretended not to watch. That lingering stare, the mix of desire and suspicion, made me realize just how dangerously close I'd come to losing everything. By the time I emerged, damp hair clinging to my neck, the room felt smaller, more intimate, more suffocating. I tried to act as if nothing had changed between us, pressing a kiss to his cheek with a teasing smile, brushing my fingers lightly across his shoulder. But beneath it all, I could sense him observing, analyzing, every move, every gesture, cataloging for future evidence. Dinner that evening was tense, each clink of silverware and sip of wine punctuated by a quiet war. I talked about the conference, the seminars, the dull conversations, all while keeping my eyes away from his, trying not to give anything away. He smiled, nodded, asked questions that felt innocuous, yet I knew better. He was measuring my tone, my posture, my words. He was watching. And then he excused himself, taking a phone call I suspected was pre-planned. When he returned, he looked even more composed, as if nothing had happened, though I felt the sting of judgment beneath his eyes. The way he handled the situation, the calm, calculating control, left me unsettled. It wasn't just suspicion, it was strategy. He wasn't naive. He wasn't powerless. The next day, at the Liberty Insurance family picnic, I tried to regain control, slipping into my usual confident demeanor, interacting with colleagues, making small talk. But my mind was elsewhere, darting to Tom, wondering if he had called, if he'd texted, if our little world of secret meetings was about to be exposed. Every laugh I shared, every tilt of my head, every playful gesture toward the kids felt performative. I was performing the role of the happy wife, but inside, tension coiled like a spring. Then I noticed him, Tom Bradley, moving through the crowd with that confident grin, the same arrogance I had found intoxicating and terrifying in equal measure. The weight of guilt pressed against my ribs, and I realized that Adam might not even need proof. He had always been perceptive, and now, more than ever, I felt exposed, raw, vulnerable. Later, when I saw him talking to Janet, the unassuming poise she carried, I felt a pang of fear. She wasn't just a colleague's wife. She was a barrier, an unknown quantity who could see through the deception. I caught glimpses of Adam's face when he recognized her. There was a quiet intensity there, a simmering fury I couldn't yet interpret. Back at the hotel room, I found myself replaying every conversation, every casual touch, every laugh, every opportunity I'd had to be discovered. My stomach twisted at the thought of what Adam might already know. The idea of him orchestrating some quiet, private revenge, something I might not even notice until it was too late, sent shivers down my spine. By evening, I tried to maintain composure, telling myself it was all in my imagination, that Adam was just concerned, maybe overreacting. But the lingering weight of the past weeks, the way he had appeared unexpectedly, the way he watched without accusing, it all hinted at a mind plotting far beyond what I could anticipate. The storm hadn't broken yet, but I could feel it approaching. And deep inside, beneath the guilt, beneath the fear, a small, undeniable truth whispered in my mind. I was no longer in control of the narrative. Adam was. And soon, I would learn exactly what that meant. First update. I had convinced myself that the next few days at the conference would be uneventful, a chance to focus on networking and presentations. Yet, every time I heard my phone buzz, every time I saw Adam's name flash across the screen in my memory, a shiver ran down my spine. He had appeared out of nowhere, so calm, so composed, yet somehow holding the invisible reins of control over me. I had to maintain the facade. I had to stay in control. The first night back in the hotel, after the long drive, I slipped into my routine, showered, and dressed in comfortable clothes, trying to keep my mind away from thoughts of Adam, from the guilt that bubbled up like a storm beneath my skin. He had been so casual, so polite, so careful. That unnerved me more than any argument ever could. When I returned from the bathroom, towel wrapped around me, I caught a flash of his eyes, dark, sharp, calculating. He was scanning the room, checking everything. My stomach dropped, an uneasy realization gnawing at me. He had probably seen more than I had guessed, and he knew more than I was willing to admit to myself. "You look tense," I said, voice lighter than I felt, brushing off the feeling. Adam only smiled faintly, an edge of something unreadable in his expression. "Just a long drive," he said. "I could use some rest." I laughed softly, trying to sound casual, as if we were just another couple sharing a hotel room. But even in the lightness of my words, I felt the weight of his gaze, imagining it scanning, calculating, measuring. That night, after pretending to settle into a comfortable calm, I went through my bag, my hand brushing over the small, inconspicuous pack tucked inside, a pack of condoms I kept hidden after my recent encounters with Tom. My pulse quickened, but I told myself it was just routine. No one had to know. No one except Adam, perhaps, if he chose to investigate. My stomach twisted when I realized I had left no way to hide the evidence if he searched. And I knew he would. He had been the kind of man to notice details I thought were invisible. Every subtle shift, every gesture, every casual remark was probably cataloged in that quiet, observant mind of his. He was meticulous, patient, and intelligent. My heart pounded as I imagined him finding out what he might do if he did. The next day, the conference dragged on. Every seminar, every handshake, every polite conversation with colleagues felt like a cage closing tighter around me. I had to appear professional, charming, engaged. But my thoughts kept drifting to Adam, to the hotel room, to the way he had seemed to anticipate everything without raising a single alarm. By the evening, I had a brief window to myself. I slipped out of the seminar hall pretending to check emails, but really just to clear my head. I had been careless with Tom over the past weeks, and now the nagging fear that Adam knew more than I expected began to take hold. When I returned to the room, Adam was already there, sitting calmly on the edge of the bed, eyes scanning the city skyline through the hotel window. His presence was unnerving, calm, quiet, deliberate. He didn't ask about the conference. He didn't confront me. He didn't raise his voice. That was worse than any accusation I could have imagined. "Long day?" I asked, trying to sound casual, keeping my tone light, fragile. He nodded, not looking at me directly.
"Yeah."
"Figured we could have dinner later," he said. His voice was even, measured, but beneath it I sensed something cold, something that made my pulse spike. I tried to maintain my composure, telling myself it was just dinner, just a routine, just a chance to pretend normalcy. But deep down, I realized I had left myself exposed. My small, hidden pack of condoms, the secret rendezvous with Tom, everything was a ticking time bomb. Adam didn't need words to convey the storm brewing beneath his calm exterior. Later, in the hotel restaurant, I noticed subtle shifts in his behavior. He was polite, attentive, charming to the staff, and yet there was an intensity in his gaze whenever I laughed, whenever I gestured too freely. He was watching, always watching. And I realized with a sudden jolt that his revenge had probably begun quietly, methodically. He didn't need confrontation to hurt me. He needed observation, patience, and strategy. The drive back to the hotel room that night was silent. I felt the tension coiling tighter around my chest with every turn of the wheel, every passing street lamp, every subtle glance Adam threw my way. My mind raced with possibilities. Had he searched my bag? Did he know about the condoms, about Tom, about every careful lie I had constructed? The fear of exposure mixed with the shame of my betrayal in a way that made my stomach twist into knots. When we returned to the room, I tried to relax, tried to appear nonchalant, but everything felt sharp, too real. Adam's calm demeanor, his measured words, the quiet intelligence in his eyes. It was like walking on a wire stretched thin across a dark abyss. One misstep, one casual slip, and everything could unravel. Later, after pretending to unwind, I excused myself to freshen up. I left Adam sitting on the bed, pretending to read a magazine he hadn't touched. When I returned, he was quiet, calm, almost serene, but the faintest smirk tugged at his lips, subtle and terrifying. I could sense that he had discovered something, maybe my hidden pack, maybe more, but he didn't accuse. Not yet. He was patient, strategic, calculating. That night, as I lay awake, I realized the power dynamic had shifted completely. Adam had regained control, quietly, meticulously, without raising his voice or confronting me outright. And in that quiet, unbearable realization, I felt a fear I hadn't known I could feel, a fear of the consequences of my choices, the exposure of my secrets, and the subtle, precise revenge of a man who would not tolerate betrayal. I could feel it building, a storm waiting just beyond the surface. And I knew, deep down, that my time of freedom, of secret thrills, was slipping away with every calculated moment of Adam's patience. He didn't need to shout. He didn't need to accuse. He would dismantle my world quietly, piece by piece, and I was powerless to stop him. Second update. The next few days were a blur of work and nervous anticipation. I tried to immerse myself in the conference, but my thoughts kept drifting back to Adam, back to the hotel room, back to the quiet way he had entered my life with a shadow of suspicion lingering over everything I did. Every time my phone buzzed, every time a notification chimed, I flinched. It wasn't just paranoia anymore. I knew he had seen, or at least suspected, everything. Returning to the room after seminars, I tried to maintain my composure, laughing at Adam's casual jokes, offering smiles that didn't reach my eyes. But beneath it, I was constantly calculating, wondering if the hidden pack of condoms I had left in the bag had been discovered. The thought made my stomach churn. I had always considered Adam meticulous, but I had never imagined just how methodical and patient he could be. That evening, after a brief dinner in the hotel restaurant, he suggested we take a walk. The city lights cast long shadows over the sidewalk, reflecting off his calm, measured expression. I tried to engage in casual conversation, but he remained unusually quiet, listening, observing. I felt a tightening in my chest. I knew he was piecing things together in his mind, planning his next move. When we returned to the room, I pretended to unpack, arranging clothes, adjusting toiletries. Adam moved about the room with calm efficiency, his eyes scanning everything, as if he were mapping my life without me knowing. I realized, with a sinking feeling, that he was probably aware of the pack I had left behind. And then came the moment that changed everything. While I had stepped into the bathroom for a quick shower, Adam had quietly approached my bag, fingers brushing over the zippers, the texture of the contents, feeling for any evidence I might have left behind. I could almost imagine the small, precise movements, the deliberate way he would have examined everything. My heart thumped violently in my chest. I had left myself exposed. When I emerged from the bathroom, damp hair clinging to my neck, Adam's calm gaze met mine. I felt a shiver of fear. There was something in his eyes that told me he knew more than I had ever feared. His silence was worse than any accusation. It was a quiet declaration of control. "Long day," he said casually, though the faint smirk tugging at his lips betrayed his inner satisfaction. I tried to respond lightly, but my voice caught in my throat. I realized he didn't need to confront me outright. The mere presence of that smirk, that calm, calculated stare, was enough to convey that he knew everything. He didn't need words. He had regained the upper hand without lifting a finger in confrontation. The next morning, the tension didn't ease. We attended a brunch organized by the conference, where colleagues chatted, laughed, and networked. I tried to maintain a professional, composed demeanor, but every glance from Adam across the table sent a pang of fear through me. He wasn't just observing. He was assessing, calculating, watching for any slip that would reveal the truth. Back at the hotel room, I began to notice subtle changes. The small items in my bag seemed disturbed, slightly shifted. A sense of dread washed over me. My carefully maintained secrets were no longer safe. Adam had begun his quiet revenge, and I was powerless to stop it. The thought made my pulse race, my hands tremble. That evening, he suggested a casual dinner in the room. I went along, trying to act nonchalant, but the fear gnawed at me. He brought up mundane topics, work, the kids, upcoming bills, but every word was laced with a subtle, underlying control. It was as if he was steering the conversation, testing me, observing my reactions. After dinner, I excused myself to the bathroom, trying to gather my thoughts, trying to calm the rising panic. I had to maintain my composure. I had to appear innocent, unaware. But the fear of exposure, the knowledge that Adam was likely aware of everything, made it impossible to relax. When I returned, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, calm, composed, hands folded, eyes locked on me. The quiet intensity of his gaze made my stomach twist.
He didn't speak.
He didn't need to. The message was clear. He knew. He had taken control, and every step I had taken to manipulate, deceive, or hide was now under his scrutiny. Days later, the inevitable confrontation came, not through words, but through evidence. Adam had hired a private investigator. I learned, in a crushing moment of realization, that every rendezvous with Tom, every hidden meeting, every secret had been documented. Photos, videos, even audio snippets. I could see the pattern unfolding in my mind. Adam had planned, waited, observed, and now he had proof. The moment of exposure was subtle but devastating. Adam didn't scream. He didn't shout. He presented the evidence with calm precision. Photographs, hotel receipts, audio recordings. Every secret, every lie laid bare. My heart raced, panic and shame flooding me. The careful life I had built in deception crumbled in silence. He didn't need to confront me with anger. His revenge was methodical, precise, and devastating. He had poked holes in my carefully constructed life, both literally and figuratively. The small, hidden pack of condoms, the rendezvous with Tom, every lie, I knew he had discovered it, and now, the evidence was undeniable. I was forced to face the consequences of my choices. The betrayal that had once felt thrilling, now a source of shame and fear. Adam's control, subtle but absolute, left me powerless, exposed, and desperate. I had underestimated him, underestimated his patience, his intelligence, his quiet, calculated approach to revenge. The following weeks were a blur of legal consultations, tense conversations, and the slow unraveling of the life I had built on lies. Adam maintained a calm exterior throughout, but I could sense the satisfaction in his quiet victories. Every confrontation, every disclosure was handled with precision. He had regained control, and I was left to face the fallout. Even as I tried to maintain appearances, to pretend that nothing had changed, the truth was inescapable. Adam had orchestrated a revenge that was subtle, devastating, and utterly effective. My affairs, my deception, my arrogance, all laid bare. I had underestimated him, and now I was paying the price. Final update. The weeks that followed were a waking nightmare. Every day, I felt the weight of Adam's quiet, methodical revenge pressing down on me. I had imagined confrontation as a storm of shouting, a fight with angry words, but Adam's approach was far more devastating. He had left me exposed, humiliated, powerless, and every attempt to regain control backfired. It started with small, almost imperceptible moves. I returned home after a long day of work at Liberty Insurance, trying to act normal, but the house felt different. My belongings had been shifted, subtle but calculated changes that screamed Adam's presence. And then came the final bombshell, the documents, the proof of my betrayal, the photographs, and the audio recordings. They weren't just in his hands, they were ready to be presented to anyone who needed evidence. I remember the exact moment he handed them to me, sliding the folder across the kitchen table with a calm, unyielding gaze. My hands shook as I picked up the folder, flipping through the evidence. Hotel receipts, photos of me with Tom, even video snippets. Every secret, every lie, every moment of betrayal captured with chilling precision. I had thought I was clever, careful, untouchable. I had been wrong. "You need to sign these," Adam said softly, pushing the divorce papers toward me. His voice was calm, ice-cold in its resolve. "Or I will. And everything will be filed. No compromises." I stared at him, my mind racing, panic and shame mixing with a simmering rage. "You can't do this. It's insane," I stammered. My voice cracked under the pressure of realizing how thoroughly I had been outmaneuvered. Adam didn't flinch. He simply waited, letting the weight of inevitability settle over me. I could feel the years of arrogance, the thrill of deception, drain out of me in that silence. I had underestimated him. I had assumed my affair, my carefully constructed double life, could never be undone. I had been wrong. By the time I signed the papers, I felt hollow. The house I had once called a home, the life I had manipulated and controlled, was slipping away. Adam had regained everything he had lost, quietly, efficiently, and with a precision that left me powerless. My career at Liberty Insurance took a hit as well. News of the affair spread, tarnishing my professional reputation. Tom faced similar consequences, his career stalled, his credibility destroyed. The glamorous affair that had felt so thrilling was now a public humiliation. And then came the personal consequences. Adam had ensured that our children, Sarah and Jake, were protected from the chaos I had created. Custody arrangements were firm but fair. They would see me occasionally, but the home they loved was now a sanctuary under Adam's guidance. He had rebuilt stability in a way I had never imagined. I moved in with Nancy, trying to escape the humiliation, the constant reminders of my mistakes. But it was impossible. Adam's revenge had been comprehensive. He had left me with nothing but the cold realization of my own choices. My career, my independence, my image, all shattered. I was forced to confront the consequences of my deceit daily. Meanwhile, Adam moved on, but not recklessly. He formed a bond with Janet, Tom's estranged wife, who had also suffered at the hands of betrayal. Their relationship was careful, deliberate, and built on mutual respect and understanding. He didn't rush. He healed, as did she. Together, they created a life that was grounded, stable, and honest, a stark contrast to the chaos I had created. I watched from the sidelines as Adam rebuilt his world. He renovated the house, established routines for the kids, and brought a sense of normalcy back into the lives that I had endangered. The children flourished under his care and Janet's gentle guidance. She introduced them to koi ponds, road trips, simple joys that had once been lost in the turbulence of my deception. And I was left to grapple with the ruins of my choices. Every day was a reminder of my arrogance, my recklessness, and my inability to see the consequences of my actions. I had pursued selfish thrills, disregarded the love and trust of my family, and now I faced the aftermath. I attempted to reach out to my children, but Adam made it clear that any contact would come with accountability. I had to sign an admission of guilt before supervised visits could even be considered. My pleas, my attempts to justify, to rationalize, were met with unwavering resolve. Adam had set boundaries, firm and non-negotiable. I realized then that my manipulation had been met with superior strategy and intelligence. I had been outmatched. The final humiliation came when Tom vanished. He abandoned me, leaving me to face the consequences alone. The child I had carried, the thrill of secrecy, all vanished into a reality I could not escape. I was forced to rely on Nancy, who herself had become entangled in my mistakes, yet refused to let me completely crumble. We were bound by circumstance, not choice. I spent months trying to rebuild, trying to find some semblance of control, but Adam's presence loomed over every aspect of my life. He had ensured that the power I had sought through manipulation, through deceit, was now in his hands. Every decision, every move, reminded me of my loss. Adam and Janet eventually married, creating a home filled with love, laughter, and stability. The children adored her, and I watched from afar as the family I had once torn apart found harmony. My influence, my power, my ability to manipulate had been dismantled with precision. In the quiet moments, I reflected on my downfall. Every thrill, every risk I had taken for fleeting pleasure had been met with calculated consequences. Adam's revenge had been thorough, thoughtful, and devastatingly effective. I had underestimated him, and in doing so, had lost everything. As the months passed, I came to understand the full measure of his quiet vengeance. The condom sabotage, the careful surveillance, the patient accumulation of evidence, all of it had been designed not just to expose but to teach, to reclaim, to establish control and stability. I had been outmaneuvered at every turn, and the reality of my choices weighed heavily on me. I had lost a husband, a home, a career, and a reputation. Adam had gained stability, respect, and a family rebuilt on trust and honesty. My own life was a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the consequences of deceit and the devastating effectiveness of meticulous, patient revenge. I live now in a small apartment with Nancy, my freedom diminished, my pride shattered. The glamour and thrill I once pursued have evaporated, replaced with quiet, constant reflection on the errors that led me here. I see Adam thriving, a stark contrast to my diminished existence, and I am left to reconcile with the ruin I created. Every day, I am reminded that my choices, my betrayal, my arrogance, have led to this reality. Adam's revenge was not loud, not violent, not impulsive. It was measured, intelligent, and devastatingly effective. He reclaimed his life, his children, and his dignity, while I am left to face the stark consequences of my own actions. And in that reflection, I realized that the life I once thought I controlled was never mine to manipulate. I had been outsmarted, outmaneuvered, and finally exposed. The thrill of deception, the arrogance of infidelity, the illusion of control, all shattered under the quiet, relentless precision of Adam's revenge.